You're very welcome back to Seoige and O'Shea. A little later, we'll be back investigating the paranormal with our spooked team.
Now, if you've been watching the news over the last month, you could easily be forgiven for thinking the jobs boom is over.
Hello, you're welcome to 6-1 News. First, the headlines. Mobile phone company Motorola to close its Cork plant with the loss of 330 jobs.
More job losses as the spate of redundancies from multinationals continues. In Waterford, pharmaceutical company Sanofi Aventis announced it's to close with the loss of 200 jobs.
And there was another jobs blow to the Midwest this evening with the news that Thomson Scientific is to shed 200 jobs at its plant in Plassey.
Meanwhile, a further 200 jobs are to go at Eartech.
Workers arriving at the Procter & Gamble plant in Neenah this morning not knowing if their jobs were secure. The company has decided that 280 of the 500 jobs at Neenah are to go.
In relation to Pfizer, I understand that 65 people are to be made redundant and that 2 plants are to be sold as going concerns.
So the jobs are gone.
It's crazy the amount of people that are getting let go from factories, and it's going to be very hard to find a new job.
Now, with so many redundancies, the job market must be in a serious decline, or is it? Here to talk about what all of this means is employment expert Rowan Manahan. You're very welcome, Rowan.
Well, thank you.
It sounds very serious. The numbers are adding up there. How many jobs are we losing in this country at the moment?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment are the people who track that. And you can look at their monthly statistics. They're available on the website, and given that that's the business that I'm in, I keep a very close eye on that. And it turns out that for any 12-month period, so for instance the most recent figures we have is the 12 months to the end of February 2007, it's about 25,000 jobs a year. Now that's a huge number of jobs. But the SRI report came out today which said that there'll be 78,000 new jobs created this year, and while they expect unemployment to creep up fractionally, there's no significant shift going to happen in the live register this year.
So should we be worried?
Well, I suppose in an election year there's always going to be an awful lot of noise made about anything negative that's going on someone else's watch. And perhaps there's something of that nature going on. Now, I'd be no apologist for the parties in power right now in that regard, but certainly I would see that there hasn't been any significant shift. Now, that is not in any way to denigrate the very real shock and the very real stress that the people for whom this is happening are going through. There's 25,000 people in the last 12 months got the bad news and come home and had to go, we're going to go out there and find myself a new job. Very scary prospect.
And a lot of them seem to be factory jobs as well, which means people who may have been in employment for quite some time, maybe 10, 15, even longer.
Indeed.
And that's a huge shock to the system when your factory closes down.
And you're dependent on the IDA or whomever it might be to try and attract new investment into your region, particularly if you're outside one of the major conurbations. So yes, that does make life very difficult.
That's the other point as well. A lot of the places where the factories are going is in towns where they would be, if not the main employer, one of the main employers. And suddenly people start thinking, what's going on in this town?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And, you know, there's no easy answer to this. If that is happening, and the fact of the matter is that has been happening for the last decade, through the best years of the Celtic Tiger, we have had between 15 and 30,000 jobs a year made redundant on an annualised basis. But what's happened is, obviously, the economy has been so buoyant that they've been able to reabsorb those people, and as a result, we've seen a gradual decline in the number of people who are unemployed in Ireland. The major concern for anybody for whom this has happened is not, you know, why did it happen or what's going on or who's in power or any of those other questions. The question is, how do I get out there and find myself a new job?
Yeah, actually, we did ask for calls, and we had a call in from Pat, and he says he lost his job recently. He worked with a computer company who have now relocated to India, which happens a lot. He has young children and a mortgage. He also has a number of friends who are soon to be in the same situation. What does he do?
He gets out there and he finds out what's going on in his particular area of expertise. If he's in the IT sector, clearly a lot of programming jobs are moving to Bangalore and indeed to Budapest in Hungary. There's a lot of programming work going there. Programmers there cost about 1/5 of what they do in the OECD countries. So clearly, in the way that you know, large-scale heavy manufacturing disappeared quite some time ago, you're looking at some of the the brighter jobs that looked like being the safe job for quite some time to go, also starting to vanish over to that side of the world.
So are we looking at people having to get to adapt, to evolve, almost in a sort of a Darwinian sense, to survive, really? That they'll have to maybe drop what they've studied for a long time, drop what they're good at, and go and try and do something else?
The statistics coming out of America say that the 14-year-olds of today will have 3 entirely different careers by the time they're 38. Now, that's the futurologists, and obviously they do a bit of a chicken licking on all of this. But that's a pretty scary number for anyone to deal with. And having to reinvent yourself at 25, and again at 30, and again at 35, that's a very scary prospect going out into the market. But someone coined the phrase lifelong learning a long time back, and there's a reason for that. We're not in anything other than a knowledge economy now. And your knowledge is only as good, and your marketability in the marketplace is only as good as how current that knowledge is. So if you're dealing in the equivalent of ancient Sanskrit and the market is looking for the latest C++ programming languages, clearly there isn't going to be an attractiveness there for you.
Okay, so you're sitting at home somewhere down the country, you've just been let go. You've only been doing this job for maybe 5, 6, 7 years. You don't know how to do anything else. You're depressed, you're under pressure. How do you go about making yourself, we'll say, a saleable person again in the workplace, making yourself hireable? How do you lift yourself up and get out there?
And you've hit on the nail on the head. That's a very large part of what people have to do, is get over the emotional shock. I would deal with people who are made redundant all the time. I help them get them back into employment. That's what my company does. And what I would say is, first off, if you're working for a large company, the likelihood is they're going to give you something called outplacement, which means access to somebody who would otherwise be maybe too expensive for you to go and see, who's an expert in this arena, who can help you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get out there again. They can help you represent yourself to the hilt in writing in terms of your CV and your cover letter, or filling in application forms, all of those hoops that you have to jump through in the early stages of the job market. They can help you look and feel your best as you walk into an interview room, and most of all, they can help you determine what is it you really have that makes you special and memorable and credible and marketable in today's very cruel marketplace.
Yeah, because the interview situation has changed a lot recently, hasn't
yes.
it? I mean, you have to be, before it was just like, who are you, what do you do, what can you bring to the company, the standard pat questions that everybody got.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Tell us a bit about yourself, yeah.
What are we looking at now when we walk into an interview
What you're looking at in
situation?
most organised environments is what's called a competency-based or a behavioural interview, where we will say, good on you, Joe. Very nice of you to come along today. I want to talk to you about conflictual situations, because that's something that you may be dealing with on a regular basis in your new job, working for me. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to deal with a head-to-head 180-degree conflict with a colleague? What happened? How did it arise? What did you do? What was the outcome? And you're sitting there going, I'm ready to tell you a bit about myself.
Well,
I like walking.
Canoeing. I like canoeing.
Moonlight strolls. And it is very searching, and typically the process takes a lot longer than it used to. When I was coming out of a formal education into the workplace, it was a one-meeting situation. Maybe you might meet the boss's boss for a rubber stamp after that. Now you could be going 2, 3, 4 stages of the process. There's some psychometric profiling sometimes involved. Now clearly that's at the upper echelons of the market, but that kind of thinking is creeping down to the entry-level job. So you have to know, there's no point in turning up for a tennis match with a hockey stick. And that's what I see a lot of people doing in the jobs market. And we've got to know what's going on out there.
But we should say that there are a lot of jobs out there, and there are opportunities, and if you do maybe look at it as a great opportunity for you to upskill, to change what you do.
I actually looked at our numbers for last year in terms of the people that we had dealt with and the outcomes of their situation. And just over half of the people who'd been made redundant, 100% of them, when it happened, went, this is a horrible situation, this is an emotional wrench, I'm stressed out, I can't sleep. But more than half of them, it was about 54% of them at the end of the year, said, you know what, probably that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I never would have moved on otherwise. I was institutionalized, I was happy, I was expecting my gold watch at some stage in the future, but in fact I've gone out there now, and I've either gone out on my own, or I've invested the money, or I've gone and got myself a new job. It can go well.
That's great. That's a positive note to finish on. Rowan, thanks very much.